We're going to take just a moment and talk about this POB. You asked the question in chat, why did your defenses not feel good? This is a self-cast, I think. Let's see. Where's our Exsanguinate? This is a self-cast Exsanguinate Scion. This is one of the builds that's really popular at the beginning of this league of Ultimatum. There are a ton of people playing this. Some people low life, some people Scion. Some people like me were playing Trickster, but that's kind of a different build. But let's see if we can go through this POB here and figure out why the defenses on it weren't feeling good for you. So when possible, we're just gonna like skip talking about the offense, but like we're just, let's focus on the defenses, right? So this character, reason for the ascendancy, we have Necromancer Gladiator, so we're block based. We also have a shield that says recover life on block, and we're not Mind of Matter, we're not ES based, so that's perfect. We have 215 life, but only 6.2k life. So I think if I had to guess, we have a lot of percent life. We probably don't have enough flat life on our gear. In terms of defense, I see block chance is 63. The spell block is 44. And I see a couple places that could change. But let's finish flipping through the skill tree here and see what else is going on. I guess through the POB, and we'll see what else is going on. So Exsanguinate, Unleash, Chain Brutality, Control Destruction. This probably feels great for clear, but because we're only on a 5 link, and we're also using Unleash, our single target probably feels a little bit loose. Once we're on a 6 link, like this is a character that I played, so I've got some good input on this. Once we're on a 6 link, Unleash, Exsanguinate is fine for single target, but on a 5 link, the Unleash probably starts to feel a little bit underwhelming, right? So I'm not surprised to hear that your single target felt a little loose. In our boots, so we don't have Delirium Gloves. Gotcha. In our boots, we have Corrupting Fever. Sounds good. Efficacy, Swift, Brutality. That's about it. We have Flame Dash, Smoke Mine, Second Wind. So no Arcane Surge that I see yet. Exsanguinates. I don't know why there's another Exsanguinate here. That's weird. Let's see. Enduring Cry, Urgent Order, Second Wind. Sure. So we have Endurance Charges. I see that. Herald of Purity and a weapon. Sure. Pride, War Banner. Sounds good. We have a life tap in our body armor. It looks like life tap might have been your last link. Sure. Exsanguinate, Desecrate, Bone Offering in your weapon. And we're using a Cold Iron Point. So this is one of the downsides of trying to use a Cold Iron Point with this build. We'd like to have a trigger weapon to make sure that our Bone Offering is going off all the time. But as long as we have this up, it's fine. It's just that a trigger weapon is probably the best way to maintain that buff. So we have our Bone Offering. And we're not using Glancing Blows. With our flasks, we have a Jade, Quartz, Granite Flask. And we have no Last Flask. I'm going to assume that you had a 5th flask here. Maybe it just didn't come across in the POB. So we have a lot of like evasion-based flasks, but we don't have any actual mitigation, right? Like we have the Granite here, but I'm surprised to see that we don't have a Basalt Flask. That's something that I would have liked to see. So let's see. I didn't see any source of Fortify. We do have our flasks turned on. We have endurance charges. Let's see. Fortify, no. Let's turn on elusive just for the sake of like, let's say we're clearing a map or something. Consumed a corpse recently? Sure. Have you blocked recently? Sure. Pride's there. Hex, Warcry stuff. Consecrated Ground, Covered in Ash. Is anything else here going to matter? I didn't see any like blind or anything weird. We have +1 recover life on block. Our helmet has about 100 life. Our body armor has nothing. Uh-oh. I see a problem. Tabula Rasa would probably be a better choice, even in an SSF scenario, just for the 6th link, because our body armor is not really doing anything at all for us. Boots, 30 movement speed. Regen. The regen is nice, but we're going to get the amulet here real quick. So I'm going to talk about the amulet first. The amulet has life res int, and like we don't really need int because like we're already almost 400 intelligence. There's no reason for that. The fact that your amulet doesn't have leech on it is kind of a miss because we don't really have a good way of recovering when we take damage, right? Like we have a life flask, presumably down here is the fifth one, but we don't have any leech and we don't have any recover on kill. So instead of having like physical damage leashes life, which would be like an Elder mod or a Delve mod, I believe the two places to get that. We don't. We also are anointing, when you anoint freedom of movement. Freedom of movement's down here for evasion and gain phasing on kill. The thing that I would have expected to see here, if I were just looking at this build in the dark, I would have expected that you anoint vitality extraction. This is recover 2% of life on kill. It kind of turns your build into a trickster, right? It kind of just feels like your life is always full because you're always killing stuff and you're really good coverage with like unleash and chain. So vitality extraction, by my account, should be the anoint here, and it would feel much, much better than a freedom of movement. We can always get something like phasing on kill from an abyss tool, the same way that we can get onslaught on kill from an abyss tool, right? So that would solve some of the recovery, both getting on kill with the anoint and then getting an amulet with physical damage leashed as life. In the short term, what this character could do is take boots and have like damage leashed as life if you killed recently. It wouldn't help you as much against bosses, but it would keep you nice and healthy during maps because you're always killing recently, right? We have a leather belt, which I think is a mistake. It's got a bunch of life and res on it, but even in an SSF scenario, especially because essences are so good during Ultimatum League, you can just go to Haywark Hamlet, put essence on every single map, and you'll always have enough chaos because Ultimatum just puts so much chaos into the game, like actual chaos orbs. Rolling a Stygian Vise with some kind of life and some kind of res would be much better than this because it allows us to put an Abyss Jewel in that has gain phasing on kill, gain onslaught on kill, something along those lines, right? So before we make too many changes to your character, let's go into the calculation tab. So the calculations, we have a maximum hit taken on the bottom here. So in the Fizz column, I said like if a build fails, it's going to fail because it doesn't have enough Fizz mitigation of some sort. So the maximum hit taken is 13. Okay, that's fine. And the effective hit pool is about 55,000, right? If you want to see, and this is kind of an aside, if you want to see how much of a role armor is playing in your build, come into the configuration tab and type in enemy hit damage 5,000, and you'll see that like some of these numbers are going to go down a little bit, and some of these numbers are going to go down a lot. If your Fizz mitigation or your effective HP plummets when you're putting in something like enemy hit damage, that's kind of a signifier that your build is relying really, really heavily on armor, right? Because armor has diminishing returns against big, like one big hit, as opposed to a bunch of small hits. So that's kind of an aside. So we are 1355, and I see that your spell block is a little bit low. We're at block, spell block, attack dodge, spell dodge, because we have our flask up. So let's have 6344. If I come to the configuration tab and I go EHP calculation, if I toggle this from average and I toggle it to spell instead, you're going to see that like your effective HP is a little bit lower, right? So we're only 35,000. Spells in general are harder to mitigate than attacks, right? Because attacks, you get like, it's easier to get the dodge, it's easier to get attack block, and it's easy to apply things like blind, right? When it comes to spells, spells don't roll that kind of accuracy that attacks do, and then spell block and spell dodge are just harder things to acquire on the skill tree and on gear. So if we are 6344, well, we actually have some great block nodes right here. 1, 2, 3. And then because we've taken these nodes here, we could path instead through minion damage. And this kind of makes our skill tree a little bit more succinct, and it gives us a bit of spell block. So this is, instead of 6344, now we're at 6352. So this is a +8 chance to block spells. On top of that, there's this spell block right here, which brings us up to 60. So when you're at a 6352 chance to block, and now we're at 6960. So I'm going to show you what this would look like if we turn these off. Let's go back to average after EHP calculation would average like this. We are 1355. So 13,000 is the maximum single hit that we can take. And then the effective hit pool, it feels like we have 55,000 health. So what was it? 1355? 1355. Let's turn those nodes on. And all of a sudden we're at 1377. So like the maximum hit taken isn't going to change because it's still a function of like, okay, if we do get hit, how big is that hit? But the effective hit pool, because we're not taking damage more often, we went from 55 up to 73, right? So this is like almost 50% tanky, right? We got a bit more block, a bit more dodge. Or sorry, a bit more block and a bit more spell block. Another thing I don't see in here, unless I missed it, was a Tempest Shield. Tempest Shield would bring us up to 7963, which is pretty good in terms of getting our effective HP up there. So again, the maximum hit taken doesn't change, but the effective hit pool is now at 79,000. So we're at 55, and then 72, and now 79. And then if we cap this out with a Rumi's, well, you know what? Hold on, let me do this first. We have a granite flask right here, and granite's good. Okay, so Rumi's is also a granite, so it's gonna be like granite to granite, so no swap there. But this will give us a little bit of block and a little bit of spell block. We are at 63 spell block, and Rumi's will just about cap us because let's say the only thing we care about is the spell block, because oftentimes the only thing you care about is the spell block because you have enough block in places. Just go like this. Let's turn off this guy, put this guy on, and now we're at 78, 73, 78 because we have maximum block chance in the gladiator, and now we're over 100,000 effective hit pool. So we have doubled our effective HP on average against all sources of hits. We've shored up our biggest weakness, which is like spell hits, right? And then let's say that this is going to feel much tankier because we're going to have Fizz damage leeches life from our amulet, hopefully, once we get an amulet. And then we'll also have like a new anoint of vitality extraction to make us feel like we have, what's that flask called? I always call it like coruscating elixir. That is not the name of it. Cinder Swallow. It kind of feels like Cinder Swallow, or it kind of feels like we get to cosplay as a trickster ascendancy. So if you made those changes to this character, I bet it would feel a lot better. Things like 100 life on all of our gear. We're missing life in a couple places. Like we have no life here. 35 crafted life instead of 55 crafted life. Like how much life are we missing? Quite a bit, to be honest. And a lot of these changes could just be like get an essence, slap life on something. So we have a ton of percent life. Even if we do something like, let's type in body armor real quick. There's a chest piece down here. Even if we did something like this and just had like, you know, add modifier, crafting bench. So even if we just had like some normal looking body armor like this with a bunch of life, bunch of percent life, all of a sudden we go like from 6.2 to like 6.7. So like if this character got like 7.5k life, I wouldn't bat an eye. Like that's the kind of life total that I would expect to see on a character like this. So once you get those bigger life totals, this effective HP is going to be like 150,000, maybe even more than that. Maybe we have things like a helmet that has Fizz taking as elemental damage. Maybe a body armor also has Fizz taken as Ellie. Maybe we have Fortify worked into the build as well. And all of those things really work well together. Even just turning on Fortify right now, you see that we're almost 150,000 effective HP, up from where we started at the very beginning, which is 50,000 average effective HP. So that's kind of a glimpse at like what you might consider when you're making this character. Like the skill tree looks pretty similar. The gear looks a little similar. And like, you know what the skill gems are doing. You've seen this kind of stuff. This is a build that all sorts of people like Lighty and Ziz were starting the league with. But when you dig into it, you see like, okay, we're missing block. We're missing Fizz taking a Zelly. We're missing life on our gear. Like we're missing all these things. They kind of make it feel like, well, maybe it doesn't have enough damage, or maybe it doesn't have the kind of survivability that you'd want from a character like this, especially as a league starter. So that about covers it. Hope that provides some good insight into how you would, maybe how you'd build your own character, but more than that, how you would take a POB, dig into it, and try to find out what the issues are, like what might feel good and what might feel bad about it. Because like that kind of investigation, if I'm honest with you, is my favorite. I think it's great.